good afternoon, good evening to all of our listeners all over the world. I'm Barry Miller, RevAmp podcast host. I'm really excited to talk product-led growth to you with Mathias Saint-Jean at Unito. He is a product-led growth expert from the RevOps perspective. We're going to talk strategy. We're going to talk tactics. It's going to be really fun. Matthias, welcome.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thanks for having me on the RevAmp podcast. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Really excited to have you. As we were just discussing, we've actually never talked product-led growth. Everyone talks about, I've read about product-led growth. I've even done product-led growth before it was called product-led growth. But on the RevAmp podcast, we've yet to do product-led growth and podcast theme. So I'm really I'm really excited that you're here. And really excited that we're speaking. So I don't know too much about you or your company, which will make actually this podcast even more interesting because I can be curious and ask you questions straight up, and then we'll get to the product-led growth strategy at ASAP. But tell me about yourself, and how you got to this position.
Of course. So about me, I've been working into marketing stuff for the past 10 years, approximately. And went from a marketing operations background. So I started in B2B industries, building material industry 10 years ago. So not the software world, but playing with marketing stuff, email marketing automation. I've done maybe 4 years of that. And then I joined a software company where I had the privilege to implement a marketing automation platform and dive deep into what marketing operation is, what's the impact on the company. So I had the chance to build those teams. And finally, 2 years ago, I joined Unito and went from just marketing operation to marketing operations, sales operation, CS operation, product operations. So all of that makes revenue operation. And I'm today heading the revenue operations practice at Unito. So Unito is a no-code workflow management platform. So think about us as a two-way sync tool that you can use between different tools you integrate. So we're close to Zapier somehow, but we have the two-way sync offered on the market. So take your project management tools, your CRMs, marketing automation, and try to sync those tools together. So that's Unito.
All right, awesome. So RevOps guy that also helps RevOps people, which is awesome. So let's talk about product-led growth. From my experience, some of the best RevOps, when I say my experience, from my friends and my professionals in my network, some of the best RevOps, some of the best product-led growth focused companies come from marketing ops. The RevOps professionals, because marketing ops is very process oriented and very tech oriented, and a lot of product-led growth is that it has similar patterns. Not to say that sales ops doesn't, but that there's, I would say, a higher concentration for the marketing ops perspective. Would you agree with that statement? It seems, if you're on video, that he is a good but for our listeners at home, would you agree?
Of course. Definitely. Maybe one way to explaining is that those technologies, marketing technologies, often cover a larger ground within the company. Think about the CRM, the database, the way you communicate, that kind of stuff. And so I'm not surprised to see a lot of people coming from this once very ungrateful territory, which was marketing operations, to something that is a bit more important and strategic within the company. I think companies started to realize that the tech and the way you adapt them can have a direct impact on the strategy, the go-to-market, or the way a company is handling those stuff. So we see more and more of those sales operations tool or sales automation tool, but marketing is, owning that territory of tech processes, data, mindsets, and go to market. So I'm not surprised. And in a few years, people will start from sales and maybe go to revenue operations or back to marketing operations. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I think there's marketing tech landscape that's like so big that you can't even find a logo. It just looks like a one of those
That's
on
crazy.
purpose that they made. Like, oh, it looks like a design out of logos. That's like how many logos there are in the marketing tech landscape. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So great. So let's talk PLG. Let's just go straight to the business of Unito. Because I think in order to talk PLG, we have to understand what Unito a little bit more on the pricing model and the sales teams or the lack of sales teams, or maybe there are sales teams. Every PLG company I speak with does things differently.
Indeed.
So let's start. How does your company, how's it shaped in that perspective?
Of course, this is the question. So Unito offers a two-way 2 weeks free trial. So our go-to-market is you can sign up, try the tool, and eventually convert. So that's a traditional go-to-market. We're not freemium. We're offering those 2 weeks free trial. So at the end of the day, we have this volume of people that are being interested using the product or not. And the challenge is to triage through this noise and try to focus on the highest potential leads you can find in this area. So yeah, I guess Unito needs to triage, classify those users and sign up, and then focus on specific ones. So we have a sales assist motion in place. We started with an inbound model, which was fully inbound. So we were waiting for people to solicitate us, to ask us questions, to ask for some help. And we slowly moved to an also proactive motion where we basically tell to our SDR, our product specialist, to go after specific leads. But back to PLG, like everything is driven around the product, right? So it means that our SDR or product specialist needs to know everything about the product because that's the main focus for our trialers and signups. So this is not about intent anymore. This is not about like the way a company wants to organize itself. It's like the product decides if somebody is interested or not. It has to be easy to use, and of course, we need people to be there to assist and give them the best chances to activate. Activation is close to conversion in that model. If you activate the product, if you use it in the right way, there is a higher chance you'll convert down the road, of course.
Absolutely. So, so the go-to-market, just to recap, is 2-week trial. Obviously, they find it, I guess, from marketing or word of mouth. We'll talk more about that.
Of course.
From before that, then people do a trial. Do they put in their credit card for that trial, or is it credit card free?
Credit card. That's our main model. So we have online terms, and we try to privilege that. Of course, sometimes we face like companies with the more complicated procurement cycle. We need to work on legal stuff, but we try to keep it on the low end. I don't know how to say that. We're always focused on this credit card expertise. And at the end of the day, we might activate several teams within the same company. It's better for us if the product does the job. So if 5 or 6 people wants to try the tool, that's okay, credit card. And then that's a different discussion. But if we go enterprise, or when we go enterprise, it changes. But I'd say that 80% of our transactions are through credit card. Yeah. The self-serve motion is very important for us.
Right. And this is just getting really detailed, but the credit cards, are they corporate cards? Are they personal cards? Are they team cards? Are they like sometimes a marketing team has a card and sometimes there's an org card? Do you have any thoughts on that? I don't know if that's even trackable, but I'm curious if that's something that tracked.
Yes, it is tracked somehow, but it's tied to our user base. So we have a lot of what we call personal plans. So those are people alone working on their own and activating Unito, spending like $20 a month. This is going to be their credit card. But a segment of the market which is growing very fast for us are those mid-sized companies. And we start to see those team credit cards popping up, or this logic of giving a budget to a specific sub team within a large corporation. So yeah, it's happening more and more, and it's tied to our growth and the type of companies we're working with over time.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And also really cool that you can track that. Okay, so then we have the credit card, and then at some point, or not at some point, so they do the credit card, they can start using it right away. Do they need, I guess, does your team have an implementation team, team? Do they, obviously, I guess the product has to be easy enough that they don't need the implementation team. Like, what's going on after they put in the credit card information?
Of course. So I was talking about sales assist, like pre-conversion. For our customers, there is a continuity. So the product might be easy to use. The product might prioritize this self-serve approach, but at the end of the day, we need to connect with them. So yes, we have an onboarding process in place. We don't offer a sales assistance to every trialers, and as a consequence, we don't offer onboardings for all our customers as well. So it depends on the type of plan people will convert on, the type of expansion we want to achieve within a specific company. But yes, we have a CS team dedicated to those onboardings and workshop. It's very important for us to help them realize the value of Unito. And I would say that's not because the product is difficult to implement, but that's because the product can expand within the company. You can integrate more tools. You can activate more teams within the same company. And we need to make it sustainable. So we need to connect and we need to sell this value as well.
Yep, no, it makes a lot of sense. Has your implementation team or customer success, I think implementation team, have they ever spoken to someone after the 2-week trial?
You mean after the 2 weeks
trial?
trial?
The 2-week trial.
During the 2 weeks trial, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying this. The way simpler thing to say.
Yeah, no, but you're right.
Trial, has your implementation team ever done an implementation, or that only happens after the 2-week trial is done?
That's an excellent question. So it's happening in some cases for us. So let's say you're talking with this large company. This company has large requirements. We need to get a pricing for 300 users. At that stage, before we sign a contract, we need to make sure that our solution or our product can match all the expectation and can answer all those questions. And that's because of the experience that we had with previous customers that we realized, okay, we need to involve the CS team before we sign the contract, because what happened in the past, you sign those large contracts and it's very appealing, right? Like 300 people will use our product within the company, but then you didn't take enough time to test the product at scale within that company. So you might face like security issues, authentication issues, single sign-on issues within the company. And when we did not take the time to evaluate that before, we created friction after the purchase, which is the worst thing that can happen with a new customer. So yeah, the CS team will be involved in very specific cases where we know that our product needs to be implemented in a specific way with specific consequences. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. So I'm trying to think now where to go. We can talk about the virality of the product, like viral, which is a big piece of PLG, or we could also talk about data points that make it more interesting. I think I'll start with that. So let's talk data points.
Of course.
I'll tell you about my experience just from PLG, and so there's sometimes some data is marked off by like how many users there are. So for example, like Monday.com, it's a local company in Tel Aviv. They reach out if there's multiple teams coming, and then the sales guy consolidates it, kind of thing. Like, oh, we can actually, did you even know? People don't even know that these other people are using Monday.com, which is really cool and a really special PLG motion to have that privilege. Then there's the other thing is something that I'm sure you've done in marketing ops, right? Like, how do you, like the classic like hub lead score, like this person has gone to your website and or the person's used one person has used your app 10 times, or let's say 5 times, probably more reasonable, in the past week, and then they used it again the next week, and so they haven't churned within 2 weeks. So then you're looking at like the churn, you're looking at the usage, and then so that's, I guess, tier 2. Then tier 3 is how deep they go in the product, right? Not about how often they sign in, but are they using like a advanced feature even in the trial? So I'm sure that also has something to go on. So of those 3 things, I guess, where do you guys start? Do you hit up all 3? Are there different sales reps for different scenarios? Would love to go in and deep dive into there, and obviously discuss things I didn't talk about in those 3 pillars.
Thank you so much, Barry. This is very accurate. So yes, we implemented a specific scoring maybe 18 months ago, which is a PQL scoring. So just to give some background about that, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when you implemented a scoring for a software company, it was mainly marketing intent and demographic profile. And the mix of 2 was supposed to be enough to go after the best leads with the highest potentials. But when you think PLG, of course, product usage needs to be the best indicator of people using your product in the right way or not. So what we did is that we implemented this trial score, if you want, which is made of 3 different sub-scoring. So product usage, how do you use the product? And then you mentioned specific feature. And this is the important thing. It's not about like who is using the product or not. It's about how they use it during the trial. So let's say for Unito, for example, if you use a custom field when trying to map fields between different tools, that's an indicator that you're going to be a good lead for us, in the sense that your needs and requirements will be more important than just sending this data here and there. So our scoring is made of product usage, but also marketing intent and demographic profile. What we did is, based on that, we defined 3 different buckets. First one is the ignore bucket. You don't use the product, you don't fit, demographically speaking. Okay, we don't care. It's not that we don't care, and I'm going to go back on that, but the sales teams will not focus on those. Then we have the pay attention bucket in between. Okay, they're using the product a bit. We're close to a good demographic fit. They visit the website and stuff like that. And finally, we have the act now leads, the best leads. They use the product in the best way. They have the best demographic fit. And I want the sales team to jump on those ones as quick as they can, act now. And to give you maybe an overview, the act now leads for us are maybe 5% of the entire sign up base. Only 5%, but they represent the highest conversion rate and the highest ARPU as well, average revenue per user. So then how do we organize the sales team to address those buckets? And this is where you start differentiating between the inbound SDR, answering those questions, and the proactive SDR. Okay, you focus on those 5% of leads and you go after them. So you have those sales sequences, you try to place a phone call, you try to do whatever you can to connect to them as soon as you can. So I don't know if it answers your question, but this is what we've implemented and how we are today structuring our sales assist motion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I thought it was actually interesting. It's an SDR, not like an account executive at the point of act now.
It's a SDR, still an SDR, because we are going after individuals and our account executive is working on a different kind of leads. We call them expansion qualified leads. So those one are, the strategy is very similar to the one happening at Monday.com, the example you took. How can we identify people from the same company in different teams, and what level of intelligence can we compile so that the AE can slowly go after another team, try to put people into relation, and try to expand the usage of the product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then the SDR, let's say the SDR attacks the attack now, and then they get a yes. So then are they closing with them? Are there any contracts sent? Are they just, the person needs to just stay on past the 2-week trial? Like what happens after that?
So it depends on the type of Acknow leads. For example, we have like a very small company, but willing to pay like $300 a month, $300 a month. So this one can be closed by the SDR because once again, no procurement, no legal, no NDA, that kind of stuff. However, you can still make business with a very large company activating within a very small team. But if there's a specific procurement and red lines on the MSAs and stuff like that, then this is the AE business. So our threshold is based on the complexity of the procurement cycle, of course. And those Acknow can be both. Of course, we want them to generate like the best MRR, but it's different whether you generate this MRR within a small company or a big one.
Yep.
So,
right. Okay, so now to be pretty specific. So let's say you do Acknow, and then they're in conversations, right? Are the sales assist people, are they faced with talking about competitors? Let me bring up more background to this question. The reason that they became Acknow is because they went to a very deep different part of the product, in theory. And so they get the product, they get what it does, they know what it does, they had obviously a need for it. So like the need is very clear, but do you think they're also doing that with your competitors' products, like at the same time? And if they are, then obviously your sales rep has to do that. But if they aren't, do the sales reps even talk about competitors? This question is coming from like this product-led growth standpoint. Like once people are actually on it, are they working on it with multiple products at the same time?
That's a delicate line. So of course, we need to assume that they're trying and testing our competition and different solutions. So sometimes they are very transparent about it, because this is one of the questions that we ask during the sign-up process. We don't trigger that question for everyone, but we get this information. But at the end of the day, product-led growth being about your product, the sales team needs to make sure that we address the use case in the best way possible. If we do, we are better than the competition anyway, because it's hard to treat the same use case in the same way, using Workato or using Integromat or using Zapier, using all those tools out there. So our sales team and SDR have that mission to make sure that the use case from the customer is implemented in the best way possible. That's the only way for us to differentiate ourselves versus the company. But of course, we have those discussions and we are prepared to handle the objections if you want. So there's a traditional sales approach, but we don't force this approach. We let the customer talk about the way they use the product, and we try to help them as much as we can.
Yep. And is pricing transparent on your website?
It is, yes.
Okay, cool. So then there should be less surprises on pricing for the users also at that point. Okay, cool. So then these guys are using, okay, so let's talk about the sales assist. So when we're doing sales assist, you mentioned sequences before. Is that like what's happening? Like they get a score of Acknow, then you just start messaging them in email, or you start messaging them from in the app, or what's the ways to reach out to these people?
Of course. Yeah. Great question. We tried everything. So that could be a discussion about experiments, but we try to diversify the channels, of course. So we work on the copy, we work on the cadencing, but that's mainly emails. I guess the challenge for us when it comes to Acknow is to generate this first connection, and this is the most important part. People will use the product and they don't come to you spontaneously. So you need to go after them and trigger that first reaction. So often it's going to be a high level of customization within an email, traditional sequence, but then we sometimes use the phone as well on top of that, or SMS, or in-app messages, of course, and we try to find the best association of channel and best cadence to maintain our indicators. Those are activity-based indicators, but you have this act now sequence. We need to maintain a high reply rate and a high meeting rate. So we experiment within those and we see what's the impact on reply rate and meeting rate.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. So we definitely just did a pretty deep down in the PLG motion at your company. Can you tell me maybe about the software stack, if you're allowed to, of what you guys for understanding product usage and understanding and the whole thing, the whole stack.
So how do we architect the data and how do we get this data here and there? Yeah. So we used to use an ETL platform. So just a way to extract the data from our product, interpret the data in a specific way, and then load the data back in our tools. So we use HubSpot as a CRM for marketing automation, sales automation, everything at that stage. And we are thinking about reverse ETL as we speak. So a way for us to put all this data into a warehouse and then get the data back in the app. So yes, we're thinking about all of that. And if you allow me to maybe go somewhere else based on that, we realize that product data is something important, all right? But when you get this data is even more important. And it's all about when. So I don't know if it answers your question about the stack and what we use, but the changes we are making in the way we administrate the stack is getting towards those live events and being able for us to trigger the communication at the right time based on the product experience. So the when is probably much more important than the what when it comes to that motion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. And then, okay, cool. What percentage of your company is sales? Do you know?
Percentage of the company is sales versus
like sales reps.
self-serve. Oh, sales reps. Yeah. We are a team of 5 today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And cool. So it's not, the majority isn't, it's not like more than 20% sales or things like that.
Exactly.
And that's where prioritization is obviously even more.
Indeed. The sales yield and how do you justify those headcounts, of course.
So you're a RevOps person. Tell me, this might be hard for you to answer because I think this is your first RevOps job. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. Revenue operations, yes.
Right. Specifically. So I guess hard to compare it to other professions that are just B2B. I mean, obviously you're familiar with the just B2B market, but it's a different thing. But so I guess we could just talk about like what if a person wants to join RevOps at a PLG company, what questions should they ask beforehand? What do you think their job would be day to day? Because there's always a question of what is RevOps, but maybe it's something more specific at a PLG type company than a non-PLG company. So that's what I'm asking.
That's a great question. So revenue operation, very much like marketing operation in the past, is all about like process, people, and platform. Just a way to sum it up. So you need to manage the tech stack. You need to negotiate with the providers here and there, but you also work on those processes. And when we talk about lead scoring, that's a process. When you talk about like a customer scoring, we didn't talk about that one as well, but that's the same logic. The way you implement those processes to make sure that all those companies are more efficient in the way they collaborate between each other. And people, because one of the RevOps missions is to train people, educate them on how to prospect, how to, how to use a marketing automation tool, how to use a sales operations tool, what indicators we need to follow. So it's not an easy answer in the sense that PLG might represent more marketing ops than sales up, or more processes, I'd say, than tech management. That's the main difference that I'm seeing today, RevOps and PLG. The impact of those processes is not just about the marketing team anymore. That's marketing and sales. That's marketing, sales, and CS. That's marketing, sales, CS, and product. And you need to create those processes that will basically impact all the different teams. So I'd say that the process part of RevOps is more important in a PLG environment, for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, and that's what I think I was like, without saying it, that's what I was hinting with the marketing ops, because I see that the process is, and that's actually also the reason why I probably would not be a good RevOps in PLG, but maybe would be good at RevOps in other companies.
Yeah, indeed.
Because it is a like a trade. I mean, I'm curious if our listeners, but like I've read some RevOps professionals are the ones, many of them are the ones that enjoy it the most, are the ones that also like making their dishwashing packing capabilities more efficient. We've heard that on the podcast before. So like, but then I've talked to RevOps people that aren't as process oriented, but I feel like specifically for PLG, process oriented, as you mentioned, is super important, and marketing ops and RevOps for PLG. So super cool.
And maybe one way, and once again, to sum it up, because I felt that like marketing ops for larger companies and now RevOps for a startup, we are there to challenge the status quo. So usually we are that guy or those profiles within the company where we are basically a big pain in the rear for everyone, in the sense that we are challenging the way people work, we're challenging the technologies that we use. So sometimes we bring a perspective that is not the easiest one or the easiest to digest from those individual teams. So we are there to challenge the status quo, and we're there to make sure that we don't stay in the same state of operations, let's say.
Yeah, no, I think in Israel we call it the Israeli chutzpah, which is a Yiddish word, but
yeah,
like
sounds about.
Comments. It's hard to define chutzpah, but someone that challenges and that maybe says something that they shouldn't, but you also want to listen to it. It's a unique chutzpah. And
exactly. Nice,
okay.
Nice one. Yeah.
Yeah, if any podcast will get Yiddish, and it's a win for me. So absolutely. So listen, I think our listeners learned a lot. If they have any questions on PLG or RevOps, what's the best place to reach out to you? Are you part of any communities? Should they reach out to you via LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'm part of a few communities out there. So Rev Genius, RevOps Co-op, for example, are some of them. Otherwise, you can just check my LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to keep the discussion going and live. This is something that I love to do: share the experience and getting the experience from peers. And yeah, RevOps is constantly changing and moving, very dynamic. RevOps is not reinventing the wheel, because we always needed people to take a look at those separate stuff, those silos, and trying to break them. But yeah, there's something refreshing in the way that we get away from traditional marketing and sales and a little bit more about the product. So it's changing everything: the skills, the skills of a sales team or the skills of a marketing team, etc. So I'd be happy to discuss on those communities specifically, or on LinkedIn, of course.
Awesome. Well, reach out if you have any questions. I learned a lot. Thanks, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much, Barry, once again for having me. Have a great day.